offering a lot of clarity to your client makes them feel comfortable, and you then get to enjoy each other because you've already knocked all of that stuff out of the way that's not super fun, but it's really, really necessary.
A lot of times we want to do more before we've actually mastered like the less. And you can get a lot more high return and gain on the less than you actually would by adding more in.
Working on our craft alongside of building our client relationships is going to be huge. A great way to do this is to find out the way that's best for you to set aside 5% of your income yearly and devote that towards a specific education.
So if somebody has a poor client experience, they are 89% more likely to switch over to your competitor. Welcome back, my friends, to the Successful Stylist Academy podcast. I'm your host, Ambrosia Carey. I have Drea joining me today. We are going to be diving straight into client retention techniques. And just to piggyback off this, if you missed our episode last week, we talked about 7 effective ways to build up your clientele and to build up those client relationships. So if you missed that, I'm going to include that in the show notes as well. And before we start talking about our client retention techniques, I do want to invite you to join our membership because we're going to be talking a lot more detail about the 4 pillars of building up our business. Drea, how's it going and how have you been enjoying our community?
I mean, I feel like I've been here since almost day one, not quite. So SSA is pretty special to me. It's been really cool to see our community grow and just see people. I don't know. I love the conversations. I love the realness of it. I think you and I both really have, like, we place our value in time and energy and intention and building our craft and having like hard but valuable conversations with people kind of over some of the technique and over some of the money and the fame part of the side of things, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I just feel like for longevity in those areas, the conversations that we're having in the pillars that you had mentioned is the foundations for longevity in that. And it's a way to feel good and move forward in a way that's really authentic. I know that word gets overused, but authentic to us as hairdressers, and not only as hairdressers, as people, because we're like one being, and I'm not a big fan of splitting yourself into pieces. So I love our community. I love that it seems like we're all after the same thing and we're growing together. A lot of what we're putting in our membership page is just those little like, well, I just struggled through this and this is, this is what I want to share so that you don't have to struggle through it. Or this is something I just learned, or I went on here and this got changed and we want you guys to be in the know on it. And it's just really those daily, weekly, things that like are going to help us just stay on track and grow together. So it's a pretty special thing to me, our community.
Well, I love hearing your feedback on that. I mean, I obviously, yes, you've been with us since the beginning in 2020. And I'm a testament to say, like, I am also growing and always changing and forever finding ways of building up my business. And like really ultimately the longevity of a business should not just be that you're building a thriving business, but you're also able to pass a torch on to the next person. And ideally you'd want to replace yourself someday so that you can actually retire, right? And so for me, I want to find not just the best ways to get there and the easiest way possible that you can feel most connected to, but I also would like to see our industry just have a higher retention in general. And when we're talking about retention, if you don't have those like building blocks of creating like a strong relationship and being in an environment that you feel supported in, I think that's really what brings the uptick in people wanting to leave in general. They get frustrated or they don't feel supported. And that's a really big message that I've been hearing continuously. Like as I've freelanced in the past or I've worked as an educator for other companies, I hear that a lot from people. Like, I left because I didn't feel supported. I left because I didn't feel seen or heard. And that happens in salons as well. And that's also what happens with clients. Clients leave us because they don't feel heard or they don't feel supported or they don't feel like you have their best interest. And so us giving you some of these retention techniques, we really want to talk more about like, now you've built that relationship, how can you continue to grow together? So I want to start out with just like personalizing each client experience. It not only makes it a little bit more fruitful for you, but it also makes you get to know that person on a deeper level. So if you're remembering the client preferences, you can be making recommendations based on those preferences, but then you can also be personalizing everything in between. So like an example would be personalizing a birthday or anniversary message. So that means you can build out a segment in your marketing strategy. So email marketing, for example, if you build out little segments where you can actually input people's birthdays in there, then you can have something send out like a personalized invitation to that person. So when I segment through my email marketing, for example, I will have like a questionnaire in there and it splits into two categories. So one category might be they're interested in this thing or they're not interested in this. And it kind of, you can build out a funnel tree through that. And in that process, it's really organic because when somebody joins something and they get that questionnaire sent to them, they get to take themselves through their own journey and then it drops them into the right segment. So that way, when you actually put a blast out about something, it's reaching the person who's actually interested in hearing about it rather than you just flooding them with too much information. So I have a 50% off code that I'm actually going to drop into the link below so you guys can check that out. That's to Flowdesk. That's something I've been using for several years now. I've had great success because I find it to be easier. They have built out templates where I can just input the information in. And I really like the segmentation process. Like I've used MailChimp in the past before too. I've even used the one that Squarespace provides. I've used Emma through like our booking system software. But I've had the most, what do you call it? Like I've had the most success, I suppose, out of Flowdesk. So that's why I'm going to put that in there. And I'm going to bud this on with a little stat because I love my stats. The statistic on this is kind of alarming too. 80% of consumers are more likely to purchase from a brand or from a business that provides personalized experiences. So that's the reason why we want to make sure that we're creating a personalized experience for each person, that we're not putting too much work into it. We just want to know what their interest levels are with each category so that we're funneling the correct information to them. A really good example of this might be if you provide extensions and your client doesn't know that extensions are even an option for them, how are they going to know if you never talk about it? So the interest level comes from the very beginning of you talking about it first, and then you can follow up with that. And that's how you get to grow with that person. That's how you actually retain that because you're providing more than just the service they're coming in for today. You're giving them options on things that they never even thought about. And that's really what we want to do as a business, as a provider, as a service provider to our clients.
You really do love your stats, and I absolutely love you for them.
I don't know why. I've always loved stats. I don't know. It just helps me like make sense of it all. Like I'm like, why do I like this so much?
Just like sit in a little bit and then I'm like, what's she gonna say? And then I'm like, oh, like it's all like I don't know. It's just like always these little aha moments. So yeah, thanks for those. They're not being lost. So this topic today, and I'm going to go ahead and repeat and say in last week's episode, I encourage you to listen to both episodes because building a client relationship and your client retention are really going to go hand in hand. And these two topics, they really do hold a lot of weight. They are simple topics, but simple is not always easy. And it is sad to see hairdressers in like going to cosmetology school, super excited about starting their career, and then it not meeting an expectation, or even more realistically, it not providing what they need financially in the time frame that they have to do that in. And a lot of that has to do with the client relationship that you're building and the retention, because if you have new people coming in your chair, but you're not hanging on to them, it's going to be a very, very exhausting just experience and process for you as a hairdresser. So I think these are really, really important things to grasp first to lay that foundation for success as a hairstylist, because everything else can be the building blocks off of this. If you have the confidence in knowing that you're building your clientele and your chair is full, it gives you the financial freedom. It gives you the time and the peace to then focus more to continue your education, to reach out to brands, to be on social media more. So I just feel like this is where it all begins, and it can't get overlooked. If you're jumping on social media immediately and just trying to build your brand, but you haven't grasped building your client relationships and getting people in your chair and keeping them there, I think that kind of you've maybe moved a couple steps ahead, and it's not going to set you up for success. And we really, really want that for you, because we want people to come into this beautiful industry and stay in this industry and grow together in it. So moving into my first points, I'm going to focus on 3 points, and it is work on your craft, communication, and be irreplaceable for client retention techniques. And when I say work on your craft, this seems a little bit divided from client retention, but it really isn't, because if we're not working on our craft and people come and sit in our chair and they did enjoy us, but not quite enough to be okay with that uneven haircut or the shape not being dialed in, or like that, unfortunately, is a miss. And it might just be, hey, I went to them 3 times because I really love them, but they just could never get my hair just right. And so working on our craft alongside of building our client relationships is going to be huge. A great way to do this is to find out the way that's best for you to set aside 5% of your income yearly and devote that towards a specific education. And I say specific education because it might not just be like, I mean, grab hold and take whatever virtual classes that you can take, or something that's going to fit with your time. But that 5% for me, sometimes I was calling a mentor hairstylist and saying, how much for a 3-day one-on-one with you? And how can we do this? Like, that is what I did with my 5%. Or I would go to Vidal Sassoon for 5 days and work on my hair cutting. Or like, it was very more hands-on and specific for that 5%. And then I would kind of fill it in with other education that I would be taking, possibly virtually, possibly a hands-on, like on that additional day of tagged onto a hair show that I would go to. But I think you have to have your craft dialed in, and you have to be able to execute what they came for originally, no matter how amazing you are as a person. And unfortunately, give yourself a little grace if you are a newer stylist, because there is going to be some trial and error. Like, you're not going to know how to do as easily or as effectively sometimes what a stylist for 10 years has been doing if you're in it for 2 years or less than that even. But I would make working on your craft and setting aside finances to put towards your education every year as one of the number one things that you're working on in your career and behind the chair.
That's wonderful. I completely agree with you. I think setting that money aside also psychologically makes you feel like you're working towards something. And it also means that when you're putting that back into your own education, there's a little bit more thought and intention that goes into it, rather than making a miscellaneous purchase or doing it more like in the moment or spontaneously. You're doing it with a little bit more purpose in mind. And I have found, I should probably look up a stat for this one, but I just have found that to be more effective as far as me putting that into a separate account and just really letting that sit there for a specific purpose. It lets me put more time and thought into what I want to put that back into again. And I think you actually stating this very simple part, which is simple is not always easy. I actually wrote that down because it's such a great reminder that a lot of times we want to do more before we've actually mastered like the less. And you can get a lot more high return and gain on the less than you actually would by adding more in. Kind of like the same thing as we talk about multitasking. I think sometimes we just feel like, oh, I'm really good at multitasking, but there have been so many extensive studies that have gone into this that have actually shown that you can't really truly multitask. And even though it doesn't keep me personally, because I also in like a very, I think I really do have ADHD. I think I am very much like most of our industry. Like, that's the reason why we thrive so much in our industry, because our eyes and our hands have to be in the same spot at the same time when we're doing hair. And it helps us to focus on it. And we can also talk and we can like get to know the person while we're doing the hair. So in a way, we are like multitasking. And so we feel like, okay, this is like, it fits our personality types. It fits our, I don't know, like our self-diagnosed, whatever X thing is that we want to fill in. And it seems like a good fit because of the way that we run as a person. But really dialing that down and being more intentional about it, it does take a little bit more work. but it also is the thing that is going to have the highest reward and gain on. And so I would say if you're going to focus on your craft, I think it's really important to get really strong at a couple of things rather than being able to offer everything. And that's something that I've noticed when I've talked to hairstylists where they're like, oh yeah, I do lashes on Tuesdays and I do, a scalp massage on Thursdays and Fridays, and I do extensions only on these days. It's like, it's too much. And when you give a lot of options to people, it inundates them and it becomes too many things. And then they're overwhelmed by that and they can't make choices. So to get really clear on what you want to offer, and it has to be something that it's like, we've talked about this before too. There's a Japanese term called ikigai, where it's like, it's something that you're really good at. It's something that you really love doing, and it's something that actually makes money. So if you have all of those three aspects in the services that you're providing, that's your ikigai. And so if you're doing too many different types of techniques and you're not doing really well, that's when the critique comes back on the technique. If you get really good at specific techniques and you're able to build that relationship even tighter and increase your retention with that client, then it lets you provide more than just the service itself. For example, I have clients that have been seeing for over 20 years, right? And so it's like, I'm not giving them the same service I was when we started 20 years ago. They're grayer now. Their hair has changed. They might have more hair loss. Their hair changed after postpartum. Maybe they went through a dramatic, surgery or something, and they're on medication. So now their hair is more brittle. It's finer. It's falling out. So they're a candidate for extensions rather than me focusing so much on their color. I can put extensions in and add depth and color with the extension. So I want to always provide an option for their growth and for the things that they're needing today, not what they've always been getting done. But the important thing that I'm trying to deliver to you right now is you're focusing on the relationship first. And the more you focus on the relationship, the less it becomes about the technique, and the more people have grace when you do something that is very human, which is like one side's a little bit longer than the other, or the blonde ended up fading to a really coppery tone and they don't like it. And they're going to be a lot more forgiving when it comes to that. If you're focused only on the technique, however, then there's not very much wiggle room for forgiveness. And if somebody is unhappy with their blonding, it only takes that one time. Even if you've been doing their hair for years, if it's only technique based, then you're going to lose that client just because they're unhappy with that one time. So relationships and retention, even though our last podcast episode was more about relationships, retention is an extension of that relationship. And how can you get more deeply rooted in your growth with retention with your client? So I guess one added thing I would just add to this is the loyalty comes from the very beginning. And then an extension of that loyalty is more deeply involved with the relationship that you have ongoing that's past the technique side of things. So one of the things you can offer is like a loyalty program, which in the last episode, we talked more about like your referral program. I'm talking about loyalty program. So loyalty program might be a point system, which we offer at our salon. But even like with Rooted Extensions, for example, which I'm a part of the, of this extension line, and they offer a really awesome point system where like every dollar you spend, you earn 5 points. You can put those points toward your next purchase, or you can put it toward education. So offering that, it keeps people wanting to come back, and it keeps people feeling like they're investing in something that's going to benefit them in the long run. So loyalty program is just offering a rewards or discount or even a specific service for their repeat visits. And I'm going to add a little stat in here because, that's what we do. But your loyalty program can increase your client retention by 5 to 10%. And on top of it, it actually generates on average 15 to 25% more profits per year by even offering that in general. So just keep those stats in the back of your mind. So your client retention rate increases 5 to 10% just by offering loyalty all together. And then it also helps to generate more profits, 15 to 25% per year over year. So keep that in mind. When you're offering something like a loyalty program, it's for the benefit of the both of you, and it's for the health of your business. And it's also something that clients really enjoy being a part of.
I love it. Yes, absolutely. And I keep saying like go back to our other episode because I just feel like there are so many things that we're sharing that like there's an extension of on the last episode that is very, very beneficial. So I can't state that enough. My second point in client retention techniques is going to be to really dial in your communication. And, you know, this is my focus even with SSA, growth mindset communication. And communication. And I also want to tag on verbiage to that. So your communication and your verbiage, because for me, I think clients want to feel comfortable when they come in. I think they want to feel confident in what you're going to be doing on them and that their vision is going to be executed and they understand that, you know, or that they know that you understand their vision. And the last thing is that there's clarity. And I'm going to say clarity in lots of areas, but also just in like the things that we would maybe overlook. Like they want to know if they're a new client, exactly where to find you. They want to know about how much they're going to need to budget to come in to do the service that they want to have done. They want to know what what you accept like as payment. So I think there are things that make everything a lot easier when we talk about like our policies or if they want to move their appointment like right up front. And I think that can be as simple as a text message that we already have written out that we personalize when we're sending it out to a new client, when we're sending it out to our current clients as things might be altered or changed, giving them a little bit of notice within those things. But I like for things to be clear. I did see a hairstylist a long time ago. He was one of my first regular hairstylists, and I really loved a lot of things about him. But one thing is, I never knew if my hair was going to be, let's say, $150 or $320 for what I felt was the same thing. So there wasn't communication in that, and not that he isn't at either one of those values for whatever he's charging for whatever reason, but he didn't share any of that with me. And that is a big jump. So if I'm not prepared for that, that can be an issue and it can deter me from wanting to go to him because I'm not sure, like, yeah, I have this much budgeted in, but I don't know if I have this much, but I have no idea how much it's going to be between like a $200 span. Like that's a big difference. So I think offering a lot of clarity to your client makes them feel comfortable and you then get to enjoy each other. And because you've already knocked all of that stuff out of the way that's not super fun, but it's really, really necessary. And as far as client retention goes, I felt like I maybe didn't want to return to this person because of the lack of clarity in that area that made me uncomfortable and not know what I could budget in and what to expect and what to be prepared for. So don't overlook those little communication. Another thing with verbiage in client retention is speak their language. Like we don't always have to impress them. Like we want to make sure that they feel understood. And if we're saying terminology that they don't understand, then we're going to put a disconnect between us and our clients. So I think that that's really, really important while you're trying to retain clients. Also making them feel valued. If you have come in late instead of being in a rush and saying, all right, come on over, whatever, like addressing like, I'm so sorry I was running behind. Thank you so much for waiting for me. Like right this way before we even get started. Like, I don't want to skip anything. Can I get you a coffee? Can I get you like not just putting everything over to them? Because I think that sometimes, you know, especially if it's a regular client, just like with our friends and families, sometimes those are the people we forget to be the kindest to because like, well, you know, they're like our people, yeah. They love us, whatever. Totally. Like, you know, we just take them for granted. So within our communication, if you're trying to retain clients, don't take them for granted. Like communicate with them like they're your first client. Like you can't live your life and pay your bills without them. Like they have so much value. And I think just the way that we continue to talk to our clients from the first time they walk in to when they walk out to how we're talking on social media when we're connecting with them will be a big factor in if you are retaining your clients.
I love that. I really love that you spoke to your perspective as being a client to see another service provider. So you mentioning that literally made me think of this time that I was seeing this facialist, and I was going to her on a really regular basis. I loved the services she provided. My skin felt amazing. She was teaching me a lot about my own skin. She was teaching me a lot about my own home care systems. But the one reason, the biggest reasons I suppose is the reason why I stopped going to her is because my price would vary so often. Like every single time I saw her was a different price. And it got to like the last time I saw her, the price went up dramatically. So it was like close to double. I didn't say anything. She did give me, she's like emailed me an itemized receipt, and I looked at it just to see like, did she accidentally double charge me, or did like, and so she just happened to do like an add-on treatment service, which I said yes to, and I was excited about, and it was amazing. I was so happy. My skin felt great, but she didn't mention to me that it was a $90 service with an add-on. So my ticket was like over $300 with tip. And I was just like, wow, it's a great reminder to all of us. Like, if you want to provide exceptional service, go to get a service done somewhere. And it doesn't necessarily need to be your hair, but something equivalent to that, like going to a nice restaurant, get microbladed, or you're like go to get a facial or a massage, something where you are paying for that service and just seeing the level in which they're taking care of you in that service. And like give a rating system. What are the likelihood that I would go back to that person? What was stood out about that person that really made me want to go back to that person? What didn't stand out? What were turnoffs? What were things that they didn't ask me that I wish they would have asked? I know for me, like if I get a massage done and they're using really light touch and I don't really want to say something right away, I kind of wait for them to ask me like, how is that pressure? Eventually I'm like, okay, this person has been like, it's been like about 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. Maybe I'm going to say something now. If they don't say, then I'll say like, can you use a little bit firmer pressure, or I like firmer pressure. So I'll usually say something, but I'm thinking to myself, like, if I wasn't comfortable with saying it, if I had the personality that I would just not say something, you're like silently suffering. You're laying there and you're paying for a service that you're not enjoying, and you can't even relax enough because all you can think to yourself is, or maybe you're inadvertently like pushing your body into their hands because you want the pressure refer, So I think that was such a valid point by you saying like, it's so good to check in with the person you're taking care of and find out their quirks, their preferences, all those things, that you can be the best provider to them. And it has nothing to do with you as a person. It has everything to do with your communication style, learning the techniques, and just seeing what their personalized preferences are. So thank you for adding that in, Drea.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I want to kind of piggyback off that whole thing though. And I want to actually talk about being consistent, because the other thing I've noticed with hairstylists in general that I've worked with throughout all these years is that if you aren't consistent with something, it's the quickest way to provide question as a service provider to that client. For example, some of the newer stylists I've been working with who are still trying to establish themselves behind the chair, they want to roll out the red carpet. They want to provide every single thing under the sun to their clients. They're taking their sweet time. They're really romancing it. And then the next time they come in to see them, they just happen to have a shorter booking time because they have a client after them, which is great. Hooray, we want that for them. But then they are not able to provide the same level or quality of service, or they can't take their time. And so the client feels slighted. They feel like they were rushed. And that is the feedback I'm getting both on clients and stylists end, is that there's a frustration in general with, how do I stay consistent? So in a way, you have to have like a mapped out time frame that each thing takes you, and know exactly what that's going to cost, and know exactly what, just beginning to end. How does your consultation go? How long should that take? How long does each one of these techniques, take to provide? What is the processing time going to be like? How long will it take? And then always give yourself some wiggle room on things that might need adjustments. Like if you would do a toner at the bowl, for example, and it ends up not looking the tone that you want, and you have to end up doing another express toner on top of it, did you give yourself an extra 10 minutes for that service? So whatever that looks like to you, staying consistent within those brackets is going to be really, really important to keep that person as a retained client. So the techniques that you're doing, just make sure that you're offering that high standard and you're maintaining for every single inner visit. but you also want to make sure that the quality of what you're providing to them and the products that you're offering to them is going to stay continuous with that too. So I'm going to follow up with a quick little stat on this one, and that is 89%, 89, I'm going to say it again, 89% of consumers have switched to doing business with a competitor following a poor client experience. So if somebody has a poor client experience, they are 89% more likely to switch over to your competitor. That is the power and why it's so important to remain as consistent as you possibly can.
Yeah, consistency is huge. And I think it's one that we have to really put some awareness around as stylists, because, you talk about that ADD, and I mean, I was legit diagnosed, so there's no question about it. But I think that we get real excited and we like those shiny things, and we see something like on social that like another stylist is doing, or like, that's awesome, I'm going to do that for my client. But it's like, can you keep doing it? And can you do it for every client with what you're already doing? And those are the questions we have to ask ourselves. Not do we want to do this? Not would this be awesome? But can we do it, and can we do it consistently? And can we do it in a way that we are adding it into our cost of goods and it makes sense for us for the prices that we're currently charging as well. So I would just say when you get ready to create your client experience, make sure to ask yourself some of those questions. So I really loved that info, Ambrosia. My last one, I'm going to say last one, but I do have a little bonus because I like extra things. So the last one is be irreplaceable. And this is where like, what makes you, what makes your service different from everyone else's? Like, what do your clients say about you? Ask your friends and family, like, what's your favorite thing about coming in and getting your hair done by me? And see what they say, because that's the building blocks of what makes you irreplaceable. Is not what you think makes you irreplaceable, but what your clients think make you irreplaceable. And then this is where you have a strength and you just make that strength your superpower. This isn't like, what don't I do good and I want to do better? No, it's like, I'm doing this good and now I'm going to crush this harder than anyone else. So those are going to be, so for me, I'll do an example. I did 9 years of massage therapy before I did hair. So I love incorporating a piece of that into my client experience. And I do that at the shampoo bowl. And sometimes I do it in my chair. So if I'm draping them and we're talking and having a consultation and I know them and I know this is okay and it's consensual, like sometimes I'm like doing a little bit of like shaking out their hair, especially if it's been up, and I'm like pulling it down and I'm kind of pulling my hands through it. All of you who can't see what I'm doing with my hands right now. But anyway,
just think of a mime. Think of a mime.
Yeah. I'm talking with my hands, you guys. It looks very relaxing. You would love it, I promise. But shaking out their hair or giving their shoulders a little bit of a squeeze, and I always do a little bit of a scalp massage, and I have like a way that I go about that and certain points that I'm working, to make sure that they feel relaxed. And most people are like, oh yeah, I'm like, this is the best part. Like, this is what I'm mostly here for. I love that my hair's done, but this is it right here. So that's something that people say, my clients say about me, that makes me irreplaceable. Another thing that I did mention is I can't remember everything, but I write specific things down that clients have shared with me from their previous appointment, especially really special things like something with their kids or a family member or a situation that they're going through, so that I can make sure to ask them about that in their next appointment. I think this retains clients because you're building trust and you're taking it farther than just like, you're here in my chair and I'm doing hair and you're paying me money. Like, it's like, I care, I remembered, or at least I took the time to write something down so I could have this conversation and follow up on this, with you. So I think the things that make you irreplaceable are those extras, and they're the things that maybe other people don't do. Technically, one of the things that makes me irreplaceable is I focus on problem solution hairdressing. So if someone comes in and their hair is curly everywhere except for on like the top and the front and the side pieces, then I'm going to give them a partial texture treatment and I'm going to offer it as a solution that they've probably never ever heard of before. And then they're freaking happy as can be. And now their color and their haircut has turned into a color, a haircut, And whether it's the same appointment or a different appointment, a partial texture treatment so that they can feel like they can wear their natural wave consistently throughout their hair. So these are like these are your specialties within your personality. These are your specialties in the way that you serve your clients. These are your specialties within your communication, and these are your specialties within your technique. And so I would try to find at least one specialty in each of those areas in your communication, in your service, and in your technique that you're giving your client that you can do consistently that set you apart from everyone else, so that if that client went and sat in a different chair, they would not be receiving that same experience that you and only you are able to give them. I'm going to just do lastly my bonus and pass it back over if that's okay, Ambrosia.
Perfect. Yes, let's do it.
But a practical bonus for me to get client retention is to make sure that your clients are not leaving before they rebook. So I like to finish off my client. Like I'll usually do the front of their hair first so that they get a sneak peek, right? Like a photographer sends you like 3 or 5 photos because you're going to have to wait for a month for the rest of them. And that's the best part. You're like, this is what tides me over, is that sneak peek. Yeah. So I do the front of their hair like amazing, and I let them get a sneak peek, and then I turn them away from the mirror and I finish their hair so that they're not facing the mirror. And when I turn them around, it's kind of like, okay, like, how do you feel about your hair? Was I able to execute like what you were thinking and what I had promised for today? So I love this. You're telling me you love this. So I want you to enjoy it. But next time I'm thinking, so I've already thought about something that I'm going to do next time, which could be really small, just to enhance what I've already done. So my rebooking technique is to always leave your client with wanting a little something more. So that way you make sure they love it, and then you give them your idea, which you've already pre-thought for their next appointment. Do you want to go ahead and get that scheduled today for that next time? And we can do that. And it's not just like, do you want to rebook? You know, it's like you've done this whole process to get them to want to rebook, to be loving what you did today and excited for what you're going to do next time. And then you reschedule for that idea and that appointment. So that has worked really, really well for me in the past. I think it makes them feel really special. And like you're already thinking about what the future, what their relationship, your growing relationship is going to be, and what the next appointment and hair vision is going to look like moving forward. So that's all mine for today.
And that really is an extension of like why people come to see us to begin with. And most people will give us the critique or feedback that I come to you because you're the professional. I know on my end, when I'm going to a service provider, I don't want to have to make those decisions. I want that person to give me their expert opinion and advice. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to go by that. If someone's going to, like if I'm at a restaurant, for example, and I had a waitress who was also a sommelier, and she is recommending a specific wine to pair with the lamb or whatever it is that I ordered, I'm not going to be like, no, I'm going to try this one instead. I'm more than likely going to take her recommendation. And even if it's not my absolute favorite wine ever, and that wine was paired and brought out with that specific dish, I will have a very different appreciation for that kind of wine. And maybe I'll even experience something very differently. I'm going to be looking for the flavors that is being brought out in that dish specifically, also making me have a more enhanced experience, so to speak. And my way of recommending that restaurant might not have been just based off of that one flavor or that one thing, but it was a full experience. It all encompasses that experience. So I want us to think of it, our business, that way too. Like we're making a recommendation based on this person's very specific needs and their life, their lifestyle, their type of hair, what they're really wanting, their goals. Maybe they don't have goals, but maybe we know that they can't come in except for like every 3 months. So we want to make sure that we're creating a very specific and customized recommendation for that person. And that is really ultimately what goes into us being irreplaceable, like what Drea was speaking about earlier. So I want you guys to think about all of these tips as an extension of you and your business and how you can continue to challenge yourself to grow. Because I firsthand know that the clients that are sitting in my chair today, might not be the clients that I've had my entire career. But I do know this, the clients that are in my chair today are speaking to my current and future self. I have curated a clientele that is mostly business owners, CEOs. They run their own marketing firms or they are in charge of marketing. I have curated a clientele that fits the growth of me as a person. And interestingly, the transaction to me is not so much about what they're paying for the service. They're coming in to see me, and I'm learning from every one of my clients every time they come in to see me. And that's really what builds us as better people, as better business providers, that really like we get to learn. Our clients almost become like our ongoing education in a way. And they are also the people that feed back into our growth as an individual, as a speaker, as a presenter, as an educator, as a service provider. And that will re-excite us, reignite us in what we do. So I want to encourage you to dream big, set goals, take action on all of these tips that we said. Join our membership. I will link that in the show notes, and we'll see you next week.